What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to show you how I do these little forms, and I guess we've got I guess Mark and Carl doing the video, so thank you, Mark. The way I do these little holes is just do it as two pieces, kind of like a box. So you don't need to hollow through this little, and these are great little pieces because they'll fit on a mini lathe. You probably don't want to do one much larger than 6 or 7, maybe 8 inches in diameter, because this kind of form is not going to look real good if it's real big, you know. But now these are styled after seed jars done by the Anasazi, and what they would do is they would, you know, after the harvest was over, they go out and get a couple of corn seeds, and they drop them in on the floor, and then the ones they didn't drop on the floor went in there, and then, you know, when they get ready to harvest or to plant, they just turn it over, and maybe they come back out. You know, so they come back out. Now, the most important thing is this is one of the few forms where you got to have a hole that's got a proper size, because the hole has to be small enough to put seeds in, or large enough to get seeds in and out, and small enough so the mouse can't get in. So if Mickey can't get in, so now we got the right size hole. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just pass this around, and if you got it full of seeds, they'll all get over. I should have got a little lip here, but they'll all come out. Okay, so anyway. Oh, I glue it together. Yeah, this one I turned without gluing it together, just like I'm going to do the one tonight, because I want it to not be glued together for explanation purposes. But we're going to glue the one together tonight. Now, real quickly, I'm going to go over the tools I'm going to use. I'll try to remember to talk about each one of them as we get to it. But most everything I do with a bowl gouge and a spindle gouge. The bowl gouge is a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. It's a 5/8 inch bar of steel with the Ellsworth grind on it. And the spindle gouge is a 3/8 inch tool with a fingernail grind. I could do this form with just these two tools, but there's a couple tools I'm going to use to make it just a little bit easier. I'm going to use a little 1/4 inch bowl gouge. It's a 3/8 inch bar of steel, and this is going to make it a little easier to shape the opening. I could do it with a spindle gouge and a bowl gouge, but this will be a little bit easier. And to make the joint to put it together, I'm just going to use a square edge scraper, and we could do that with the spindle gouge, but I might not get it as nicely. I might not get it with this, but this will make it a lot easier. Now, in this, now what I've done is I've found it kind of more convenient and easier for me to take the square block of wood and cut it, and then on the inside drill 2 holes in the center. And to find out where that hole goes, I drill a small hole all the way through the top piece into the bottom piece, and then I cut them apart. So now there was a little hole here to show me where to put the drill bit, and of course there was a hole here to show me where to put the drill bit. So when I drill these holes, at least they started in that little center hole, so they don't get too far off. Okay. You can, of course, put a whole big block on there and cut it with a parting tool or however you want to do it. There's advantages of doing it both ways, I suppose. But this way, I get a thin kerf with the bandsaw, and I'm cutting it while it's square, so it's, no danger. Now, on here, and I've labeled one top, so we'll start with that. Oh, good question. For these, you want dried wood. Doesn't have to be kiln dried. The piece that's coming around is air dried rosewood, Florida rosewood. This is poplar, and one of the nice things about poplar, you can go to the lumber store and get 3-inch thick boards, 11, 12 inches wide, 14 feet long, enough to make hundreds of these, one board. Or if Ken is nice enough to bring a truckload again, he brings a lot of these poplar pieces. Just make sure dried wood works best. If I were going to do green wood, I'm going to glue this with Elmer's glue, and Elmer's won't glue wet wood, but epoxy will. So if I were going to glue together wet wood with epoxy, I would call this guy John and ask him what kind of epoxy to use for that, because he's my epoxy go-to guy. So, I mean, you could conceivably do it. You could glue it with CA glue, but CA glue is not very permanent. If your wood moves at all, it's going to come apart. So I just like using good old Elmer's or, Tight Bond. Well, but then it wouldn't be wet. Sure. I mean, if you wanted to, you could. And people do that with boxes and stuff all the time. They rough out the two box parts. And basically, what we're doing is making a big box with that we're going to glue together. So it doesn't open anymore, and put a hole in it in one side. Okay. But yeah, you could twice turn wet wood, and that would be fine. But this is a nice thing to do with that piece of wood that you put in the corner 6 years ago, thinking you were going to make a bowl out of it, and somehow it didn't split. So now, like that rosewood, I don't know how old that is, but it's been sitting in the corner of the shop for a long time, and now it's got some new life. So what I'm going to do here is, the reason I put that hole in there, it's a 10 millimeter hole, is so my little worm screw will screw it on. And I don't want to put a great big deep hole in there because it might start compromising my lid opening. So one little, and there's a lot of little things, tricks that I'm using in this demo that may come in handy later on. This is a spacer. It's probably the most advanced flat woodwork I can do. You cut a little square of MDF or plywood, drill a hole in it. You can use thick ones for a little bit more or less thin. So anyway, that's a nice little way to shorten up this screw. Okay, so we got that on there. And I never tested this lathe because it wasn't on before. Okay, that's good. Now, I'm going to be turning with a chuck. Oh, there's little chance of this chuck grabbing me. But if the chuck grabs my watch, it's not going to let go until it cuts me all up and breaks my watch man. If it grabs me here, it'll take a little nick out of me and let go. I'll grow the skin back. So I'm take off all my jewelry, get my face shield, and I don't know what I did to the microphone here. So now everybody can still hear me. Okay. So the first thing we do is set the tool rest so that we're cutting right at center when it's parallel to the tool is parallel to the floor. Make sure it goes all the way around. And we're just going to do kind of a bevel riding push cut. And I'll just kind of true up this space a little bit. Little Now you notice I didn't cut this part here out into air because I'd break those fibers off and we might tear out some of that wood, and that's where I want to have my box joint, so I want to make sure it's all nice. So we'll come back and cut it going the other way. And I think what I'm going to do is put on my safety glasses. Okay, so right here we have where we're going to put our tenon. And this is going to be the top. And what we'll do is a little pull cut to start shaping this. I want to bring this down a little bit. We want to make sure that tenon is about 2 inches I have a little ruler somewhere. Well, we'll just believe it's 2 inches. Okay, now, so this is where we're going to have the tenon. So I'm going to use my spindle gouge, put it right on the corner up here, and just roll it and bring it straight down. And that's going to give me my little dovetail. Now, what I can do is, before I take this away, I can shape the outside of that lip for the opening. So I'll go ahead and do that here, and it'll probably be the last time we'll have a chance to turn that, because once the tenon's gone, you can't turn there, okay? So, and this would be a good time to sand this. And what I'm using is a little bit of Abernet, which I really like. It's got the Velcro back. It's really easy to hang on to. And it sort of lasts forever. It's not really sandpaper. It's some kind of wire stuff like screen that's sharp, and eventually it gets dull, but and you can also Velcro back. You can stick it on a pad if you've got one. Okay, so we got this. So that part right there is finished, or could be. So now we'll shape this into here. And what I'm doing is a pull cut where I've got the bevel riding, and I just roll the tool over till it starts cutting, and then pull it. And what we're doing now is a little shear scrape, and what I'm doing is I'm putting the top edge of the lower wing straight at the wood with the tool at about a 45-degree angle. The top wing almost touches, but not quite. Now sometimes soft wood doesn't shear scrape very well, but this is doing nicely. Hardwoods almost always shear scrape well, but sometimes the poplar, it actually fuzzes it up a little bit. We got a little spot there that I want to work on. And the last thing I want to do is just blend this into right here. You could. I don't really. I have cold jaws, but I haven't used them in 20 years, I guess. Hmm? Okay, so this is the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to use that bevel riding push cut. As soon as we go in, this bevel right here is riding on that part we just cut. Doing that pull cut again. Do that tenon. I'm going to put the bevel right on the corner there. Just roll the tool. Let it come down. Now here, what we can do is scoop out the inside of this tenon, and we'll just use the tenon, cut it down a little bit when we're done, and use it as a foot. Do a little shear scrape in there. Sand that a little bit. Now we can also do, we'll kind of come back and finish this outside a little bit more. Do that shear scrape. Now here you want to go to the grinder and put a fresh edge on your tool when you do this, because it uses the burr. This is the same tool, it's just a sharp one. There's a little burr on there that makes that shear scrape work well. And it's on the inside of your flute. Okay, now, if we were at home, what we might want to do is go ahead and sand this. So you can pull a sandpaper on, but we don't want to make all that dust. So we could sand this whole surface. We could have sanded the top as well. Now, one thing that's real important here is to find out if these are the same size, and they're not. Okay, but that's okay. I took a little more wood off this. We can take a little more wood off of this later. Okay. And we didn't, oh, that's probably why, because it's not quite round yet. Okay, we'll fix it. Okay. There's a little tiny crack right there. Okay. I don't think it's going to be a problem. In fact, it's only a problem if it's the bottom for right now, but we'll. You know, one of the problems with poplar is it's a very easy wood to crack. We're just hollowing this out a little bit like we would a little bowl. What I want to do is do a little scrape on there and get this just get that little bit smooth. Now, what I want to do is make that little bit of a tenon on here that's going to go down inside the other piece. Okay, so and I'm just going to do one on the other side here a little bit. That'll give my gouge a place to start. This doesn't have to be very big, okay, so very deep, so we just made it maybe we'll make it just a tiny, it's about 1/8 of an inch. We'll make it just a bit more. So we go straight in. Now, on this one, what we want to do is go straight in, I'm going to hit the edge just a little bit. Because what we don't want anything out here that's going to hit the other piece when we're putting them together. We want this little corner to match up very tightly, so I just chamfered that a little bit so that it's out of the way. See right here, I've got that little edge, so I'm not going to have any problem with the gouge skating away. One thing, when you've got that hole, when you break out, it's going to be just a little bit rough, so I like to kind of get rid of it. Okay, now. What I'm doing is trying to leave thickness in here so it doesn't vibrate too much when I'm cutting out here. So I'm testing for thickness. We probably want this, well under a 1/4 inch thick. What I may do is end up leaving this just a little bit thicker because of that crack. The crack's right there. Well, famous last saying words here. The crack's okay. See what I'm doing here when I came here? I didn't want to take that deep cut all the way across, so I pulled the tool back and cut a little more wood off. Now I still have more wood to take off here. But what I want to do is find out where my hole is here. Okay, this is a smaller tool, so we're going to raise tool rest a little bit. They're cutting right at center. So now, that hole's probably not quite big enough. If we get some of that big old Monsanto corn, it would never fit through there. Okay. So now we go back to our other tool. Okay, so that's the top. Hmm? We'll get it. What I want to do is, before I do true up the edge, is I want to set where this little tenon goes, because we don't want to take too much off. Now these are dividers, and they're kind of like a compass, except each end can make a hole in your hand. Now, the best place to get these is a flea market. Go to the guy that sells really good antique tools, tell him you want one just to use, and he'll go in his drawer and pull out one that he can't sell for a collector's item and give it to you for $3 or $5. What I'm doing is see if I got that just a little too much. Okay, so now I'm going to the outside of this little piece, and then what we're going to do is mark it here, and then we're going to cut a recess that fits into. Now, to mark this, what I want to do is let this one touch the wood and not let this one touch the wood. If this one touches the wood, it's going to end up in my shoulder, and that'll hurt and probably end the demo. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to start in here and kind of work my way back. Okay, we're pretty good, so we can stop there. What I'm going to do is get a little wood out of the way here. Now, on this one, okay, we're doing an inside scrape. We want to make sure is we're above center. If we get too far below center, what's going to happen is the bevel's going to contact the wood and we'll get a ginormous catch. Okay, don't want to have that. Also, if we get low, we don't have any clearance under the tool. So I can't, what I want to do is make a square edge. So up here I can make a square edge. Down here when I try to make the square edge, this is going to hit where I just cut and push the tool off. So I got to be above center. Now with this tool, I want to make sure I have the flat part of the tool on here. I don't want to start too close and have the bevel on the tool rest. Okay, if you're paying, I don't know if you could see that, but I didn't go quite to my line. Oh, I'll have to do that a little bit better. Okay, not quite there yet. What I'll try doing is pointing the tool down just a little bit, see if that does it a little bit cleaner. Yeah, a lot cleaner. Not quite. Now this is the cut that you want to keep doing and doing and doing until it fits. This is the least interesting part because you just have to wait. I know everybody out there could have gotten this on the second cut. Now, don't ever get tempted to sand these. You cannot control the depth with sandpaper. And touch it with 220, it'll be too big. Ta-da! Okay. At least one of us is very happy. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut this edge back so that it's a sharp corner there, so it'll fit real tight when we glue it together. And you all know I raised the tool rest, so we're lowering it back. Now let's see if we can clean up this edge just a little bit here. Do a little bit of that shear scrape. Now, again, I want to leave some thick wood in the bottom so it doesn't vibrate too much. That little squealy you hear, that's chatter work I'm putting on there in case it ever breaks open. It'll be a pretty design in there. will rest just a teeny bit high. Okay, so we're about done with this. Isn't that pretty? Okay. Okay. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this one on here because it's a little bit bigger around. And I think my hole's just a little bit big, and it might... Now, these are... Rubber Chucky, yeah, Don Doyle. Used to be in our club, so a lot of you will remember him. He's got all these cool things. But if you don't know Don, it's really easy to make little wooden things. Put a little piece of, just put a little tape on here and it'll fit really tight. You can thread it if you're into threading, but my flat woodworking skill ends with drilling the hole. I don't do threading. Okay. But a little tape, 3 twists of masking tape fits tight as can be. And then that would give you a nice grip on there. Now, if, oh. Okay. There we go. Now, I don't see... Now, if you can line up the grain on these, and it's a little difficult. I mean, if you know what a witness mark is, you can leave those, but it's like every time you put it on here, you're cutting your witness marks away, so you got to put one on the inside and then move to the outside, put one on the inside, But those will work real well. Generally, with this one, what I've got is lots of nice green stuff on the top, and not a bit of green on the bottom. So as long as we line it up either this way or this way, it's going to fit pretty good. I don't see much. I think this way is the way I want it. Okay. I'm gluing it in 22 seconds. What I'm trying to do is figure out where I want to glue it. Okay? So what I've decided, a lot of times with these, that doesn't, matching the grain's not going to be something you really have to worry about. But I'm going to try to get that one. Lined up here. Now, what I can tell from a gross level, okay, the grain runs this way, the grain runs that way. So it's either got to line up that way or line up that way. You know, you've only got two choices. So, okay. It was. I expl- Well, when Rudy gets really good, he'll be able to do it with a gouge. What I'm trying to do is do a little bit of glue around there because I don't want to wipe any off if I don't have to. Now here's a decision point for you folks. Here's a good time to come back in the morning. So if you're not real confident in your use of the point tool and the gouge, you can let it dry overnight and then it'll be nice and dry. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some grooves, and I'm going to use the point tool, and I want to be able to see. And these are my nice turning glasses that focus right about there. So if I get closer, I don't see as well. And my middle vision is all just gone to heck in the last year or so. So these, the only problem now is I might fall going over to the, can't see anything over there. Okay, point tool. Okay, this is a point tool. Guy by the name of James McClure made this for me. And it's really easy to make. I could have made it, okay. You take a round rod and you just grind it that way, and that way. Now you'll see this has a little black dot there. Well, it's a scraping tool. I put the black dot there because I had ground that side and I had ground that side and the burr's here. Now I can feel the burr, but so I just put the black dot there. So make sure when you grind it, you don't just keep going around in a circle. The side you're going to use, grind it that way, grind it that way. So then you get a burr on each side. Otherwise, it'll only cut on one side. This is a compound negative rake scraper. Right, Rudy? Okay. So. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a groove where we already have one. I'm going to try and round these pieces off just a little bit. I want to be a little bit above center, and we're not high enough, are we? Hmm? Do we need light? I mean, I can see fine. Is that? Okay. So what I'm going to do is on these grooves, I'm going to start on the right and cut to the center, start on the left and cut to the center. And you have to decide here if, it's your choice how many grooves you can make. One groove. You got to have one groove because you got a joint. I like 3 because odd numbers are good. Okay. You could do 2. This is also, I'll just mention, if you're into burning with wire or sharp pieces of wood, you can burn a detail in the bottom of each of the grooves. Whatever you want to do. If you're into inlays, you could fill the grooves with inlays. Whatever you want to do. Okay. Usually when you try to mess around with these grooves a little bit too much, you make them worse instead of better. So that's what I'm doing, making them worse. And now we can sand the grooves. This probably sandpaper works a little bit better where you can fold it and make the corner go right in there. Okay. So, now let's just clean this part up here a little bit. Just doing a little scraping cut. And here you want to remember how thick you left this part. Another little rubber chucky thing, you can make one out of wood if you work just as well. This would have to be a little deeper. Who's the guy who put that glue right there where I'd hit it? Okay, so now we want to try and get it reasonably centered. That's the part that was closest to the tool rest. So let it down a little bit. I'm just letting a piece just barely touch my thumb on the tool rest. Turn the speed way down, and then we'll see how not too bad. Could probably get a little bit better, but my little spindle gouge. And see if we can put the bevel on here and just let it. This was something you could also do with a point tool. Just want it to be reasonably clean in there. Okay. So I think I just put the tape on it so it'll stay together till the glue sets. But well, it could be. I mean, you know, if it's yours, you can put blue tape on it. I'm going to take the blue tape off when I get home. Actually, it would probably be, if we weren't passing it around, I wouldn't put the tape on it because the glue's probably set now. And it's a tight joint. One thing you can do that I didn't do because I didn't bring it is if you take that little hole at the very end, you can run a little bit of take like 320 or 400 sandpaper, roll it in a tight little straw, and just work it back and forth in there a little bit. You can do that later on now. It's not going to, but, yeah, the crack's still there. I'm not going to do anything with this. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. You can, oh. Yes, sir. But there's a whole lot of things you can do, you know, like I showed you how to kind of turn things inside the tenon so it's finished. The first time I saw that was Stuart Batty. He was doing this goblet that was about, 2 feet tall. And the first thing he did, or early on, was he'd made his tenon and he finished the bottom of the goblet. And then he held the goblet in the chuck. Okay, and then he turned the whole goblet. So now people turn the goblet over, and it's all turned. And you know, how did he do that? Because you can't, you know, once you get that thin stem, it's just going to break. You know, there's no way to hold it. So, but there's a lot of little tricks. You know, so this is just a fun little thing to do, and it's a great project if you've got a mini lathe or you know. I mean, a 10-inch lathe or an 8-inch lathe, that's all you need to do those. And if you want to get into hollow forms without hollowing tools, there's all kinds of split hollow forms you can do for Christmas ornaments. You can do, now these are side grain, you can do end grain ones. Clay Foster was at Florida Symposium, was it last year? He's fantastic. He does these little hollow forms, big ones, but he does them split, but they're end grain. And he just glues them together and paints them, and you just never know how they're done. So, any questions? Well, it's sure nice of you guys to come out when it's so cold, and you should be home covering up your plants. I hope nobody freezes.